If you're thinking about selling your house in Alexandria or Arlington right now, I need you to understand something immediately. This market is not simply hot. It's not simply slow. It's not even really balanced. It is psychologically discriminating. And that distinction is everything. Because right now in Northern Virginia, one house gets 14 showings the first weekend, multiple offers, escalation clauses, neighbors texting each other. Wow, that went fast. Meanwhile, another house just 6 blocks away, same zip code, similar square footage, similar school pyramid, sits and sits and sits. Price reduction, minimal activity, awkward open houses. The seller starts getting nervous. Friends begin asking, wait, didn't you list your house weeks ago? And suddenly, the entire emotional experience changes. Today's Northern Virginia market isn't universally hot or cold. It is extremely selective, extremely emotional, extremely psychological. And honestly, a lot of sellers still have not emotionally adjusted to that reality yet, because for several years, the market rewarded almost everybody. Now, the market rewards precision, preparation, presentation, strategy, and psychology. And sellers who are operating on outdated assumptions are getting punished quietly, especially in Alexandria and Arlington. These are not generic suburban markets. These are highly educated, highly analytical, highly lifestyle-oriented buyer pools. People here notice everything. They notice lighting, storage, layouts, noise, parking, school boundaries, walkability, flow, renovation quality, commute patterns, office space, future resale potential, and whether the house just feels easy. That last part matters way more than people realize. And after selling homes here since 2002, through housing booms, bidding wars, recessions, market crashes, pandemic insanity, low rate frenzies, and now this strange high rate psychological recalibration, I can tell you today's buyers are emotionally exhausted. And emotionally exhausted buyers behave very differently than emotionally euphoric buyers. So in today's video, I'm going to walk you through what's actually happening in the Alexandria and Arlington market, why some homes are thriving while others struggle, why overpricing is more dangerous now, what buyers secretly fear, why presentation now impacts value more than ever, how my attorney background changes the way I advise sellers, why the highest offer is often not the best offer, and why some homeowners actually should not sell right now. And stay with me until the very end, because the final section may save some people from making a major financial mistake. If we haven't met before, I'm Brian Block with Remax Allegiance here in Northern Virginia. I've been selling homes in Alexandria, in Arlington, and throughout the region for over 20 years. Before real estate, I also attended law school and became a licensed attorney in Virginia. And honestly, that legal background still shapes how I approach real estate every single day. Most people think that real estate is marketing, photography, signs, open houses, negotiation. And yes, those things matter. But after doing this for several decades, I've realized that real estate is actually a strange combination of psychology, negotiation, risk management, emotional counseling, contract analysis, timing, and human behavior, especially in close-in Northern Virginia. People here are not casually making housing decisions. And attached to these transactions are enormous life decisions like retirement, divorce, downsizing, relocation, aging parents, inheritances, career transitions, or simply burnout from maintaining expensive close-in property. This isn't HGTV fantasy land. This is real life. And one thing I've learned after 20 plus years in the real estate business is this: sellers almost never view their own home objectively. And they probably shouldn't, because to you, this isn't just drywall and countertops. This is where your child took their first steps, where you hosted Thanksgiving, where you survived COVID, where your dog greeted you every night when you got home from work, where your routines lived, where your memories accumulated. However, the problem is buyers don't experience your memories. They experience the home as a competing product online. And that emotional disconnect between seller memory and buyer perception is where many pricing mistakes begin. One of the biggest misconceptions right now is when people ask, how's the market? As if there's one answer. There isn't. There are now micro markets inside of micro markets in Northern Virginia. And the gap between winning listings and struggling listings has widened dramatically. For example, a beautifully prepared Delray bungalow near Mount Vernon Avenue with bright paint, staging, great natural light, walkability, an updated kitchen, emotional warmth can still create intense buyer competition. Buyers walk in and think, I can see my life here. That emotional visualization matters enormously. Meanwhile, another home with dark rooms, heavy furniture, deferred maintenance, weak photography, awkward layout, outdated finishes, or unrealistic pricing can emotionally exhaust buyers within 60 seconds, even if the home is technically fine. Some homes feel emotionally heavy almost immediately. Other homes quietly tell buyers, relax, your life will work here. And this is where sellers often misunderstand today's buyer psychology. Buyers are no longer operating with 2021 energy. Back then, people were drunk on cheap money, emotionally impulsive, waiving inspections, throwing logic out the window. Today's buyers are much more cautious and much more payment sensitive. Today's buyers are asking, can we emotionally survive this monthly payment? That changes everything. One of the most important things that sellers need to understand is this. Alexandria and Arlington are geographically close, but psychologically very different markets. And great marketing understands that difference. Arlington buyers often think with spreadsheets. Alexandria buyers often think with imagination. That's not universally true, but directionally, it absolutely is. Arlington buyers often prioritize commute, schools, appreciation, metro access, future resale, and strategic local efficiency. Alexandria buyers often prioritize atmosphere, walkability, character, architecture, community rhythm, and emotional connection. And if you market those homes the same way, you're leaving money on the table. And in the next section, I'm going to explain why overpricing in today's market often creates lower final sales prices, and why emotionally attached sellers accidentally destroy their own leverage. This may be the most important part of the entire video, because pricing psychology has changed dramatically, and many sellers are still emotionally anchored to peak pandemic pricing. I understand why. Your neighbor sold very high. Zillow inflated expectations. You invested in upgrades. You love your home. Emotionally, it feels valuable. But buyers do not pay for your emotional attachment. They pay for their future experience. And here is the dangerous part. Today's buyers are hypersensitive to stale listings. Once a home sits, buyers begin assuming something must be wrong, even if nothing is wrong. The first 7 to 10 days a listing is on the market are psychologically powerful. That is when buyers notice, agents pay attention, algorithms amplify exposure, and curiosity peaks. You only get one first impression. I have seen sellers insist, let's just try a higher price first. And emotionally, I understand that temptation. But often what happens is there's a weak first weekend, fewer showings, reduced urgency, online fatigue, buyers waiting, and eventual price cuts. And then ironically, the house often sells below where it may have sold originally with sharper pricing and stronger momentum. That's painful, especially because many sellers emotionally interpret weak activity as the market is bad, when in reality, the market may simply be rejecting misalignment between presentation, pricing, and buyer expectations. This is one of the most underestimated changes in modern real estate here in Northern Virginia. Presentation is no longer optional enhancement. Presentation is value. Buyers experience your home digitally before they experience it physically. They're judging your house on Metro, in bed, at work, between meetings, and while touring other homes. And subconsciously, they're filtering emotionally within seconds, which means dark photography hurts, clutter hurts, outdated lighting hurts, visual noise hurts, crowded furniture hurts, deferred maintenance hurts, especially in affluent Arlington and Alexandria price points, because buyers here are busy, overworked, stress sensitive. They do not want another complicated project. They want psychological relief. They want a house that feels easy, and that feels valuable to them. A house that feels complicated feels expensive, even before the repair estimates roll in. Buyers buy feelings first, then justify them logically. Most homeowners stop seeing their own house accurately, not because they're careless, but because familiarity numbs perception. You no longer notice smells, clutter, visual tightness, awkward flow, scuffed trim, outdated fixtures. Buyers notice these things instantly. And next, I'm going to explain why the highest offer can actually be the most dangerous offer, and how my attorney background changes the way I analyze contracts entirely differently from many agents in Northern Virginia. Now, this is probably where my background differs from most agents. Most agents look at contracts and they see paperwork. An attorney sees something different. An attorney sees escape hatches, financing contingencies, inspection contingencies, appraisal contingencies, condo review periods, home sale contingencies, settlement deadlines. Every one of those can become an exit ramp from the transaction. My job is to identify and reduce as many of those risks as possible before you sign. A contract is only valuable if it actually survives all the pressure that comes afterward. One thing that I watch carefully is what I call contingency stacking. Sometimes sellers see, wow, huge price, but buried underneath are multiple layers of buyer escape routes: financing contingency, inspection contingency, appraisal contingency, home sale contingency, extended review periods. The higher the contingency stack, the greater the instability of the deal. And after several decades of transactions, I can tell you the highest offer is often not the best offer. I once had a situation where a very aggressive offer came in on a house that I had listed. Huge escalation clause, impressive headline number, emotionally excited buyers. But my attorney brain immediately saw warning signs: thin reserves, appraisal vulnerability, emotional impulsiveness, financing concerns. Another buyer submitted a slightly lower offer, but with a stronger down payment, cleaner terms, a better lender, calmer negotiations, and lower collapse risk. I advised the seller to seriously consider the safer offer. The deal closed beautifully, and afterwards, the seller said, "Brian, now I understand what you meant by risk management." That is the difference between chasing numbers and protecting outcome. Here's something that you probably won't hear from many other realtors. Some people genuinely should not sell right now. Seriously. One major reason inventory remains constrained is what economists call the rate lock-in effect. Many Alexandria and Arlington homeowners locked rates in around 2%, 3%, maybe a low 4%. And psychologically, it is very difficult to voluntarily trade a 3% payment for a 6 to 7% payment unless the move truly improves your life or unless you have to move. That math matters, which is why I sometimes tell people you actually may not want to move right now, especially if you love your location, your current home still functions well, your payment is manageable, and the replacement housing creates major stress. And ironically, giving honest advice not to sell often creates far more long-term trust. Not every conversation should end with, "Let's list your house next month." Sometimes the smartest advice is, "Wait, prepare gradually. Let's revisit this in a year." That's real advising. If you're thinking about selling in Alexandria or Arlington, especially if you've lived there a long time, you're downsizing, relocating, helping aging parents, managing an estate, or simply trying to understand your options, I would genuinely be happy to help you think through it strategically. Not a high-pressure listing appointment, more like a consultation, a strategic conversation. Sometimes the best decisions happen 6 months, 12 months, even 2 years before the home ever hits the market. And due to both my real estate experience and attorney background, I tend to approach these situations differently. Not just how do we sell this house, but how do we structure this intelligently, safely, smoothly, and emotionally well. If that kind of guidance would help you, you can reach me directly at brian@brianblock.com. And If you found this video valuable, please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and tell me, what do you think is changing most in the Alexandria and Arlington markets right now? Are buyers becoming more cautious, more selective, more price sensitive, more emotionally exhausted? I would genuinely love to hear your perspective. And if you're quietly thinking, we may sell sometime in the next few years, reach out early. The best home sales are usually prepared thoughtfully, long before the sign ever goes up in the yard.